The Heart of It.
Roy West kicking in towards the centre. Roy
A distinctly Tasmanian conversation.
I can feel what it will be like when Tassie plays his first game, and I just...
Lynch gathers, he's got loose men everywhere, but he decides to have a pump shot, and it's an absolute ripper! 200 goals for Peter Hudson. What a fantastic effort.
How did he do that? Bear kick finishes off in style.
Up towards half forward, Stewart flying over the top. Oh, pulled in a beautiful mark.
Well done from Scott. Afterwards, he's got the first goal. Has it done?
Nichols has had the big ruck with it. Oh! Crosswell!
Hello and welcome to The Heart of It, a distinctly Tasmanian conversation. On today's episode, one of the AFL's finest wingmen during the 80s and 90s, who played a pivotal role in arguably the greatest grand final of all time. After playing in the first ever statewide league grand final in Tasmania, Darrin Pritchard was one of 17 Tasmanians selected in the first ever draft in 1986. He went on to win 3 premiership medals with the club he grew up barracking for, Hawthorn. But Pritchard rates as equal to those highs the honour of captaining Tasmania in the famous State of Origin win over Victoria at North Hobart Oval in 1990. From a football-mad childhood in Mount Nelson to the pinnacle of the game, this is the story of Darrin Pritchard.
I remember that it was pretty much everything I wanted to do. So every waking hour, I guess, was having a kick of the footy, either with mates that were close by or by myself.
Where do you reckon that came from? Why did you love the game so much?
I think originally it came from my father going to watch Tassie footy there, so the TFL. Dad barracked for the Hobart Tigers. I obviously, knowing that probably later on I'd be playing for Sandy Bay, had a soft touch for Sandy Bay, but it was really about footy for me. I didn't mind what footy I was watching. As I got a bit older, I went and watched Peter Hudson play for Glenorchy just to see a star like that play. So, didn't matter really what footy I was watching. I just wanted to absorb footy.
So your dad loved Hobart. Was he a player himself?
No, Dad didn't play at all. He was just a fan of football. He enjoyed his footy. So I think that was kind of the beginning for me. Falling in love with going to the footy. Even the memory of North Hobart and Queenborough and the TCA. Getting a pie with sauce, going in the change rooms at halftime. Really fond memories of Tassie footy.
You mentioned Peter Hudson. Who are some of the other prominent figures you remember from that era when you were just a boy? Yeah,
I guess, Graham Mackey, for Michael Elliott, for Sandy Bay. But mostly I was at the Tigers game, so I was watching Mickey Krause, Murray Dixon, Pettit, these types of players run around for Hobart. North Hobart, Don McLeod kicking big droppies from full back. So some really great memories of some of those players. Des James, was an awesome player. Before his time really as a back pocket player. So yeah, it was great.
I remember talking to Nick Rewald, who has memories of the Sandy Bay Football Club and his experiences at Queenborough, doing what most kids did there, climbing in the hedge and that type of thing. Was that an experience that you shared? Yeah,
it was. I think you had to earn your place and get up into the hedge. And one of the attractions of that was trying to get a footy. So, the footies used to go into the hedge all the time. In fact, I got a hedge story. So in my very first game for Sandy Bay was at Queenborough. So I'd made my debut down there, which was a great experience. But Scott Adams was playing for Clarence at the time, and he had a free kick paid against him. So he lodged it into the hedge on the wing, obviously got a 15-metre penalty and got reported. So he speared one. I don't even know if it went over the hedge or through the hedge. I was just a bit absorbed in the game at that point in time, but it was a bit of a shock at the time.
So you made your debut, am I right, at 19 in 1985 and then played in 1986 with Sandy Bay as well?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so 85, Tim Maxwell was the coach. We didn't probably do that well that year. We got quite a few bashings that year, but it was a good induction, I guess, in the transition to the following year with Andy Bennett. So yeah, we did have a lot of trouncings in '85, but it was a whole lot of fun. You know, Lance Spalding, Herbie Mundy. These guys were great characters around the footy club in '85, and I was given a lot of support. Chris Fagan looked after me in that first year, so I was mostly in the forward pocket, changing rover with Chris. So he was great for me as well. He provided a lot of support, and there were some games where I really didn't probably contribute as much as they'd want me to, but they stuck with me, which was something that I'm very grateful for.
Even when you reflect now and you see what Chris Fagan's achieved in the game, did you see signs then that he was that nurturer who could potentially go on and achieve what he has in the game? Yeah,
I probably didn't recognise it then, but if I look back on it, for sure. So at the end of '85, Chris took me under his wing, and we joined the Gazali gym. We also did some sprint training with a professional sprint training outfit, and so he was kind of coaching and nurturing me in that off season. And that gave me a lot of confidence. You know, I got a bit quicker, got a bit stronger. I was probably only 67 kilos at the time. So that gave me a lot of confidence. So he was actually doing that with me at that point in time. So, looking back on it, I could see that he was that type. But at the time, we're both playing, you know, or in the game. So not really thinking about that far forward at that point in time.
Yeah. 85, you struggled. 86 was terrific year for Sandy Bay. You looked the dominant team in the league and ran into Glenorchy in the grand final. Of course, this is the first year of the statewide league as well. What do you remember about 1986?
I enjoyed the statewide league. I guess I always wanted to play AFL or VFL at the time. So it felt like a bit of a stepping stone in that you were playing in a mini national competition, so to speak. So you widened the challenges that you were able to have. You're hopping on a bus and going to the north of the state every second week. So that was a whole lot of fun, being with your mates and building that team. So I really enjoyed the concept. There were some great experiences in that first year. I think Andy Bennett was awesome for Sandy Bay at that time. You know, we'd come off a pretty poor season the year before, and it was a bit Alan Jeans like that. He just broke the game down and made it very simple. So we had a really good year. I think we finished on top of the ladder. A really disappointing grand final, but it kind of got set up for us in the game before against Glenorchy, I think.
Yeah, it was a bitter grand final in many ways. I've watched the footage before and a lot of flashpoints. Ambrose McDonald clearly riled up by some of what was said to him by Glenorchy players that day. What do you remember about that grand final?
I remember it was a big crowd. Coming out of the race at North Hobart is an awesome experience. I don't know, they're really special, the races down there. I spoke to one of my mates and Bruce Payne, who is a Tassie boy. His father, Bernie Payne, won 2 William Leach medals. So we used to kick around as kids. And we always used to stand up on top of the race. It was concrete slope on the race and watch the players come out. So yeah, coming out of that race for a grand final was quite an awesome experience. But yeah, turned south pretty quick for us. I think, you know, early on, I haven't really watched the footage recently, but yeah, early on, you know, we were competitive, but then I think the emotion of what was going on took over. But that, Glenorchy kind of roughed us up in the final before that. And so we're probably expecting to cop that again, but then fell into probably going for the man and not for the football, and it didn't turn out that well for us, unfortunately.
You've mentioned a few names at Sandy Bay at the time, so Fagan, Andy Bennett, obviously. You were runner-up in the best and fairest in 86 to Andy, who won the William Leach medal.
That's right, yeah.
Dolliver is a name there at the time, Tony Martin at Sandy Bay. There were some terrific footballers.
Yeah, there really was. I think, you know, some of those players we talk about, you know, Tasmania, some of those players were awesome Tasmanian representatives as well. You know, both Tony and Michael Seddon came across and tried in the VFL. And so, yeah, they were quite inspirational to play with. And to watch as a kid as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed those type of people being around the club. You know, mentioned Herbie Mundy's, so he was such a great character. It was always a lot of fun in the change rooms with him around. But on the field, he got down to business, and he was a great protector of a young player like myself as well.
Did you need some protecting sometimes, Darrin?
Yeah, well, I wasn't that big at the time. You know, I was pretty small. Yeah, I think I did. It was good to have, you know, some players around like that help you out when you need to. You know, you talk about Ambrose McDonald and some of those more senior players. They were really good for me as a young player. Gave me a lot of you know, coaching and a lot of advice. So I'm really grateful for that from the Sandy Bay Club.
I mean, I would imagine for a young player in that environment, that era of football, that there would have been some scary opponents that you came up against. Were there any that stood out in opposition teams who, you know, you had to be a little wary of, or their reputations preceded them?
Yeah, I think there was a few there. You know, there was the Fox brothers. So they were obviously pretty tough guys. You know, and even at Glenorchy, you know, Gary Linton, Robbie Dykes, you know, those types of players. They were great players, but they were tough players as well. So I think every side, you know, down there had an element of that. Didn't matter which side it was. But I think that held me in great stead coming across to the AFL. I think playing against men for 2 years really gave me a good step up and a lot of confidence coming into playing across here on the mainland. So I think being able to ply yourself against those players was really good for me.
So at the end of 86, you end up at Hawthorn, which was your childhood club. You're a keen Hawthorn fan?
Yes, I barracked for Hawthorn, but I actually didn't think I was going to go to Hawthorn. So David Parkin was the coach of Fitzroy at the time. Obviously all the scouts were down and around in Tasmania at the time. There was a lot of players that were looking to be drafted, I guess, you know. So it was a pretty strong draft from a Tasmanian point of view. So David Parkin I met up with twice. There was a couple of other clubs, and I spoke with Hawthorn on the phone. I didn't have a face-to-face with Hawthorn. So it was mostly across the phone. But what I didn't know was Andy Bennett was sending videos of me across to Hawthorn throughout the year.
Where he'd played himself?
Yeah, where he played himself. He was great mates with Alan Jeans. So he was pushing these videos across, which I didn't know. I got the call, that Hawthorn had drafted me. So I was rapt to be drafted. It's something that I always wanted to happen. I always wanted to have a crack at playing in the AFL. I was really rapt, but I had this disappointed side as well because Hawthorn had just won the premiership in '86. And I thought I was probably a better chance to get a senior game at Fitzroy. It was a little bit of a mixed emotion, but at the end of the day, the overriding emotion for me as a young person was to actually be able to play in the big league. So that was what was most important.
And guys who you saw on your bedroom wall in posters, you were now playing with?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. So, Peter Knights was my childhood hero. I wrote letters to Peter and he wrote back. He ended up coaching me. I didn't play with him, but ended up coaching me. Rodney Eade looked after me on the very first night, which was a great experience as well. Dipper and Dermot and Platten, and the list probably just goes on. Langford and Ayres, these players that I'd had on my bedroom wall, I was now standing alongside them. The first night walking in there was pretty ridiculous, seeing all those players. But Rodney Eade was assigned my mentor for the beginning. So he gave me one really important piece of advice before we went into the change rooms. He met me out the front and he said, "Pritch, if there's any piece of advice I could give you," he said, when you're being told a Tasmanian joke, just laugh. He said, because if you don't laugh, they'll be at you forever. So it was a great piece of advice, but I'd laughed that much that night. I had abs just from laughing. There was that many Tasmanian jokes coming at me, but it was good fun.
Now, you are part of a rare group. You were part of that very first draft back in 1986, and you mentioned the number of Tasmanians who were in the frame. There were 65 players taken in that draft, 17 from Tasmania. Matthew Armstrong, Alistair Lynch, yourself, Andy Lovell, who you'd played against in the 86 grand final as well. So the code must have been extremely strong and a lot of young talent coming through when you were a player.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it was, there was some great players there, you think about Alistair Lynch and, what he did. Matty Armstrong was a great player down there as well. So there was a whole lot of players that got drafted, and I think, the league at the time was extremely strong. And there was, a pretty nice pathway into playing VFL/AFL footy at the time. So with the draft coming on and the national competition. And I think, while not starved of seeing, AFL footy because it was on the telly all the time, there was a lot of aspiration from those players to do well, across on the mainland.
You lost your mentor pretty quickly and then replaced him on the wing. So Rocket goes to the Brisbane Bears in 1988, and you got that opportunity to play on the wing and became one of the finest wingmen at the Hawthorn Football Club. So that transition into that role and having that specific role, was that something that you think really helped your football career?
Going to the wing? Yeah, I think I played, so in 85 in Hobart, I played, as a forward pocket rover, then transitioned under Andy Bennett to the wing. So I played the year on the wing down there. When I came across, Hawthorn were probably looking at me as, an understudy for Richard Loveridge and Johnny Platten, as a roving position as well. I was a bit slow in the practice matches in terms of getting up to speed with the game, so I didn't have some great practice matches. although I did towel Dipper up one day, which is another story.
Probably one we need to hear.
Yeah, I think they quickly realised that when I started to play in the reserves that the wing was probably a better position for me. At the time, the wingmen were much taller than what I was, but I had the ability to run into a lot of different areas, I guess, than what the bigger wingmen like Dipper did. So it gave the footy club just something a bit different on the wing as well, which they ended up liking, so it was good for me. But the story about Dipper was, as a practice match, played against Dipper, and Dipper was struggling. We'd won the premiership 86, he'd won the Brownlow. So there was a whole lot of pressure on him now to be the fairest player, and the guys were saying, "You've never been the fairest player." So he was copping a bit of stick, but he was feeling the weight of the Brownlow, I guess. So I did get a few kicks on him on the wing, and so did a lot of other players in the practice matches. But he decided he wanted to wear a lace-up jumper in 1987, so he's gone to the committee and they said, "That's fine, you just got to get it ticked off with Allen jeans." So he's gone to Yabby and said, "Look, the committee's ticked off, I want to wear this lace-up jumper," and Yabby just looked at him and said, "I think you better go and see the reserves coach." So never wore the lace-up jumper.
Do you know why he wanted to wear that?
He's a confident fella. Let's just put it at that.
Your grand final performances, 3 premierships at Hawthorn. You played over 200 games for the Hawks as well. Not so long ago, you were brought into the Hall of Fame at Hawthorn, which is a fantastic achievement. But your grand final performances, 89 in one of the most memorable grand finals, perhaps the greatest grand final ever played. You had a terrific match. 91, playing on Peter Matera, kept him very quiet, had a real influence yourself. Are there grand final moments that you're particularly proud of? Is there one that stands out above the others?
I think not necessarily. 89 was awesome. Yeah. So as a club, we were going for back to back. No other Hawthorn side at the time had gone back to back. There were only a few clubs in history that had actually done it. So it was a rare feat and nothing that in the history of Hawthorn had been done. So we were pretty much set on trying to win that. So from a team point of view, we had a very strong motive, a very, very strong goal, and to achieve that was really awesome. And for me to contribute to that was really good. I think the way 89 turned out for me in that game kind of helped a little bit in that Michael Tuck was our only tag. He was going to tag Mark Bairstow for Geelong. And Yabby liked to keep it really simple. And so he said whoever Mark Bairstow goes to in their position, Tucky will go to that position, and that player then can come in and ruck rove until we sort things out. So Bairstow came out to my wing, so Tucky came out to the wing and I went into the first bounce, and then ruck rove for the whole day basically. I didn't change with anyone or have a rest, so it helped me stay focused and in the game and in the centre of it. So I was able to contribute on the day to that great win. But there were a lot of injuries, a lot of sacrifice. It was an awesome game. And, I joke about Dipper before, but if you watch the replay, punctured lungs, broken ribs, 30 seconds to go, he's diving on the ball in the centre of the ground. So, he held it up in the middle for another bounce before the siren went. So an unbelievable sacrifice for the team.
Yeah, I mean, there are those that think, had it not been for Gary Ablett kicking 9 in a losing side that day, you might have a Norm Smith medal to go with your premierships. But you mentioned going into the middle at the first bounce. That's a reasonably unique first bounce in grand final history, with Mark Yates absolutely nailing Dermot Brereton.
Yeah.
Is all of that a blur, or do you vividly remember what happened in that moment?
No, I remember a lot of the game. I didn't see the incident because I was facing the footy and that happened behind me. I didn't actually see the incident, but obviously saw the aftermath of it. Another courageous thing where he stepped up for us. I think the game could have gone a lot differently if he hadn't have got up. It was quite inspirational for everyone, and when you were in to pay the price, which is the famous story of that day. But I get asked quite a bit about, the Norm Smith voting and that, and I'm pretty sure Gary Ablett would like to swap medals with me, but I don't want to swap with him. Yeah,
You've only got 3.
Yeah, I got the medal that I was playing for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another special moment came in 1990. I mentioned you're a member of the Hawthorn Hall of Fame. You're a member of the Tasmanian Football Hall of Fame. You're in that picture that's behind you, as well as a member of the Tasmanian Team of the Century, which is an enormous honour when you consider those that have come before and the legacy in the game as well. And you had the great honour and distinction of captaining Tasmania in 1990 when Tassie beat Victoria at North Hobart Oval. Firstly, on the captaincy, how much did that mean to you at the time, and then even now when you reflect on it?
Yeah, look, it meant a lot to me, but Shorey and the committee, could have selected a number of players for that. There was a lot of experienced players. In hindsight, I'm extremely grateful, but I didn't feel like I was the captain on the day. We had, a lot of experience on the ground, and everyone was kind of. We had a lot of leaders, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But certainly a great honour. I still kind of can't believe that it was actually me, given the experience that was actually on the ground. Grateful, and such a great honour. Growing up watching Tasmania teams play at North Hobart Oval was a great inspiration for me as well. Watching the best Tasmanian players through the late 70s, early 80s play against players in the VFL. Remember them, some good VFL sides coming down, Victorian sides, and playing against Tasmania. Used to absolutely love those games, and being able to see players play for Tasmania. So to actually experience that myself, and us actually win the game was as special as the premierships. Yeah.
As someone who's never played in that jumper, just seeing that jumper, there's a power, there's a symbolic power about that jumper. How would you describe the Tasmanian Guernsey?
I think for me, it kind of symbolised Tasmania. You look at the actual jumper itself; it's got the map of Tassie on it. So I think for me it symbolised Tasmania itself, but the best players, playing for their state. There was a lot of other really strong leagues around the nation, the Waffle and the Sandful, strong leagues. But at that point in time, I think, we held our own, particularly with the experience we had in that game particularly. It symbolised the strength of Tasmania for me, that particular jumper.
And obviously Tassie made a great start to the game. Victoria found a way back in. Ross Lyon came on and had quite an influence for Victoria. And then when the game's in the balance, you guys just turned it on, and the crowd became almost that additional player on the ground, didn't it? The atmosphere must have been electric. What were the overriding emotions for you being out there in that last quarter?
Yeah, I think focus. I think you really got to just focus on what we were trying to do. But we had really good connection, which is, for a team that was assembled, I think it's a great credit to Shorey and how the connection we had with each other and the purpose we had. So I think the team was really determined to do well. And once we got moving, in that last quarter again, there was nothing really going to stop us. I think aside from the focus, one of the great memories I have of that game is after the game. And it took me, I couldn't tell you how long. It might be 10 minutes, it might be 20 minutes, but it took me a long time to get off the ground just because of the amount of people that wanted to say hello, say well done. So it was for me, the pride that the Tasmanian people had that day was the most important thing.
We've now had men's and women's licences in the AFL granted, so there's that opportunity for Tasmanians to get behind their own team in that passionate way. Again, how excited are you about that possibility?
I'm extremely excited. I was so proud, I guess, when we were awarded the licences. So, I think it's going to be so awesome for Tasmania footy. I think, to have our own team playing out of Tasmania will be really inspirational for the next generation of footballers coming through, whether they be men or women. I think it's hugely important to have that for Tasmania. I think it'll give Tasmania a whole lot of confidence as well as a community, seeing their own, playing themselves against others in the AFL, but also having, recruiting other players into that team, other superstars into that team. I think will be really strong for the community. But young players will have, a really strong pathway to be able to play AFL footy in the National League. So I think that'll be really important for footy moving forward.
And as much as I'm sure you would never look back on it and regret it in any way, shape or form, but you did have to pick up your life and move, didn't you? And that's not going to be the same for the next young Darrin Pritchard coming through.
No, it won't. It'll be great. One of the things that is difficult, you're not playing in front of your family and your friends. Well, I wasn't at that time, but to be able to do that and, be able to play in front of the community that you've grown up in, I think would be a pretty awesome buzz. I experienced that in the Tasmanian game as a one-off, but imagine having the opportunity to do that every week. I think it'd be really awesome.
All right, Darrin, awesome chatting to you. Just a couple of quick fire questions as we finish up. Best Tasmanian footballer ever in the history of the game, in your opinion?
Peter Hudson, I think. Darryl Bulldog. That'd be pretty hard to kind of split, I'd imagine. Yeah.
This is a tougher one, probably. The best Tasmanian player you played with in Tassie?
That is a pretty good one. Probably Tony Martin. I think playing with him, he did well over here playing in the VFL at the time, but I think he dominated footy down in Tasmania for quite some time. So I think he was one of the best players I played with.
Best Tasmanian footy ground to play on, or best to go and watch footy at?
Probably won't say Queenborough.
Depends if you're in the hedge.
Yeah, for sure. I think North Hobart for me was the ground to play on. I really enjoyed playing there. You see some of the replays of people, sitting on top of the stands and on houses outside the ground. It's quite awesome, but the atmosphere there, when you get, towards 20,000 people is pretty good.
All right, and the Tasmanian team song, the Tasmanian Football Club team song, should it? I'm not going to get you to sing it to me right now. Should it be something traditional in the mould of an old traditional footy song, or something new, do you think?
I like traditional. So the latest songs, of GWS. What's the other one that I was? The Gold Coast Suns. I don't particularly like those Suns. Sorry. So for me, the traditional songs are awesome, and I always I still get into trouble at home singing some of the traditional songs. So yeah, I think for me it's tradition.
All right, and last one, you get a complete clean slate. You can pick any player in the AFL right now. Let's say Tasmania was playing next season in the competition. You could pick any modern player that would run out for Tasmania from any of the teams. Who would you pick?
Toby Green. I think, he's doing an awesome job captaining GWS at the moment. He's got plenty of spirit, so you know that if you go out on the ground with him, it'd be great to be beside him. But I think he'd be a great ambassador for our footy down there as well.
Darrin Pritchard, a Hawthorn champion and true great of Tasmanian football. He'll forever be remembered along with his inspired teammates for producing one of our state's finest wins. To listen to other episodes with great Tasmanians, look for The Heart of It on all your usual podcast platforms or at tasmaniafc.com. And if you're inclined, you can rate, like and subscribe. I'm Alistair Nicholson. Thanks for listening.